Hello, everyone. I'm Eleanor Ainsworth, and I'm 82 years old. You might think that at this age, I'd have all the answers to life. But the truth is, I'm still learning every day. Today, I want to share with you something I deeply regret, a decision I wish I'd thought more carefully about before making: moving into a nursing home. At the time, it seemed like the most logical choice. My family encouraged it, promising that I would receive the care and comfort I needed. I believed them, but once I stepped inside, I realized the reality was far from what I had imagined. I know many of you might be considering this option, either for yourselves or for a loved one. Maybe you feel it's the safest decision, or maybe you've been told it will make life easier. But before you take this big step, I want to share 6 things I wish someone had told me before I moved in. Because the truth is, life in a nursing home is not just about convenience. It changes everything. And once you're in, getting out isn't as simple as you might think. Stay with me until the end of the video, because some of these lessons might surprise you. And if you know someone who is considering a nursing home, this video might be exactly what they need to hear before making a life-altering decision. Now, let's get started. The most shocking thing after moving to the nursing home wasn't the small room, the regimented meals, or even the unfamiliar faces. It was realizing that I had lost control of my own life. Before I moved in, I had my routines. I decided when to wake up, when to eat, and how to enjoy my day. I could go for a walk whenever I wanted, cook the foods I loved, or simply sit quietly in my favorite chair with a good book. But inside the nursing home, I quickly realized that my time was no longer my own. Everything ran on a schedule that wasn't mine. Breakfast at a certain hour, even if I wasn't hungry. Lights out at a certain hour, whether I was ready or not. Want to go for a walk outside? You might need permission, and you'd probably have to wait until someone was available to assist you. Simple decisions, like what to eat or even what to wear, started to feel like privileges rather than basic choices. I remember my first week there, waking up in a bed that didn't feel like my own. I sat up, stretched, and reached for the book I'd been reading at home. But as I looked around the room, it hit me. This wasn't my home. My books, my favorite chair, the little comforts I'd spent years collecting were all gone. In their place were sterile walls, a bed I didn't choose, and a feeling I couldn't shake. I was no longer in control of my life. The hardest part was realizing that once you give up your independence, getting it back is nearly impossible. You adapt because you have to. You stop arguing when they tell you what's for dinner. You stop asking if you can go for a walk whenever you want. You learn to fit into their system. But in the process, you start to lose yourself. If you're considering a nursing home, ask yourself, are you ready to give up the small freedoms that make life yours? Because once they're gone, you'll miss them more than you ever thought possible. One of the hardest truths about moving to a nursing home is realizing that the outside world keeps moving without you. When I first arrived, my family reassured me that they would visit often. I believed them, and at first they did. My daughter came once a week. My grandchildren visited on weekends. And for a brief time, I felt like I was still connected to my old life. But as the months passed, the visits became less frequent. My daughter started calling instead of coming. My grandchildren were busy with school and work. Holidays were the hardest. Everyone promised they would come, but somehow plans always changed at the last minute. And suddenly, I found myself sitting alone in a common room, watching other residents stare at the door, hoping today would be the day someone remembered them. It's not that my family stopped loving me. Life simply got in the way. When you're not around every day, it's easy for people to assume you're okay, that you're adjusting, that you don't need as much attention. But the truth is, the longer you're in a nursing home, the easier it is for people to forget how much you still need them. I remember one evening, sitting in my room, holding the phone, debating whether to call my son. I didn't want to be a burden. I didn't want to remind him that I was here, waiting for a visit that might never come. So I put the phone down. And that's when I realized, this is my life now, watching the days go by, hoping someone will remember to include me. If you're thinking about moving to a nursing home, ask yourself, are you prepared for the loneliness? Because no matter how much your family loves you, once you're out of sight, you're easier to forget than you think. If you are still watching this video and finding these insights valuable, please comment the number 2 below to let me know you're here. And if you aren't subscribed yet, I would encourage you to subscribe and hit the bell so you don't miss any videos. Now, let's continue. When I moved to the nursing home, I thought I was just changing where I lived. I didn't realize I was also changing why I lived. At home, I had responsibilities, routines, hobbies, and reasons to get out of bed in the morning. Even the small things, watering my plants, making coffee, tidying my space, gave me a sense of purpose. But in the nursing home, those daily rituals disappeared. Meals were prepared for me. Cleaning was done by someone else. The plants, well, they weren't mine to care for anymore. At first, I told myself it was nice to finally relax. No more chores, no more responsibilities, just rest. But after a few weeks, I realized something was missing. The days stretched on, long and empty, with nothing to do but wait. I saw it in other residents too. People who had once been full of energy now spent their days sitting, staring, waiting for time to pass. There was a man named George, 84 years old, who had been a carpenter his whole life. At home, he was always fixing things, building small projects in his garage. But here, there were no tools, no projects, nothing for him to create. I watched him slowly withdraw. The hands that had once been strong and skilled now lay idle in his lap. "I feel useless," he told me one day, and I knew exactly what he meant. When you no longer have anything to care for, nothing to work on, life starts to lose its meaning. The mind slows down, the body follows. And soon, you start to feel like just another resident in a place where time passes but nothing really changes. If you're considering a nursing home, ask yourself what gives your life meaning. Because once you move in, finding purpose isn't just about filling your time. It's about fighting to hold onto the things that make you feel alive. Before I moved to the nursing home, I was doing okay for my age. I wasn't running marathons, but I could still take care of myself, go for walks, and cook my own meals. I had little routines that kept me moving, grocery shopping, morning exercises, even just walking around the house to keep my legs strong. But once I moved in, things changed. At first, it seemed like I was just taking it easy. Meals were brought to me, and I didn't have to stand in the kitchen cooking. If I needed anything, I just pushed a button and someone would come to help. But what I didn't realize was that the less I did for myself, the weaker I became. I stopped moving as much, and soon my legs felt stiffer. I sat more than I used to, and before I knew it, getting up from a chair started to feel like a chore. The muscles I'd spent years maintaining were disappearing faster than I ever thought possible. And it wasn't just me. I saw it happening to others too. People who walked in on their own 2 feet suddenly relied on walkers. People who used to be independent needed help with things they never struggled with before. The more we were helped, the more we seemed to need it. I remember my neighbor, Alice, an 81-year-old woman who was so spry when she first arrived. She used to take daily walks around the facility, insisting that she wasn't going to slow down just because of a number. But after a few months, I noticed she wasn't walking as much. Then she started using a walker, then a wheelchair. One day, she looked at me and said, "I don't know when it happened, but I feel like I've aged 10 years in just a few months." And that was exactly how I felt. When you stop using your body, you start to lose it. And in a nursing home, where everything is designed to make things easier, it's easy to forget that movement isn't just about convenience. It's about survival. If I had known how quickly I would lose my strength, I would have fought harder to keep moving, to stay active, to push myself even when I didn't feel like it. If you're considering a nursing home, ask yourself, will you still have the motivation to keep your body strong when everything is set up to make life easy? Because once you slow down, getting back up isn't as easy as you think. One of the things I didn't fully consider before moving to the nursing home was how much privacy I would lose. At home, I had my own space. I could close my bedroom door, sit in silence if I wanted to, and do things my way. But in a nursing home, privacy is a luxury you don't always get to keep. From the moment I arrived, I felt like I was constantly being watched. Staff coming in and out, scheduled room checks, and common areas where you're rarely alone. Even simple things, like getting dressed or using the bathroom, often required someone's help. I knew they were just doing their jobs, but it wasn't easy to accept help for things you had done independently your whole life. I remember in my first week, I struggled with the idea that I had to ask permission to do the things I used to do without thinking. Want to take a shower? You might have to wait until someone was available to assist. Need to use the restroom? Sometimes pushing the call button meant waiting longer than you wanted. Even meal choices were limited. If you didn't like what was on the menu that day, too bad. And then there was the issue of roommates. Not everyone gets a private room, and sharing a space with someone else, someone you didn't choose, can be uncomfortable. I was fortunate to have a kind roommate, but I heard stories from others who weren't so lucky. Some had roommates who were noisy, unclean, or even had cognitive issues that made sleep nearly impossible. And no matter how much you try to make your room your own, it's never truly yours. Dignity is a hard thing to lose, and I didn't realize how much I would have to give up until I was already there. When people knock, but don't always wait for an answer before entering. When you're spoken to as a patient rather than a person. When your daily routine is dictated by a schedule you didn't create, it changes you. You start to feel less like yourself and more like just another name on a list. If you're considering a nursing home, ask yourself, are you ready to give up the privacy and control you've had your whole life? Because once it's gone, it's hard to get back. When I first moved to the nursing home, I told myself it was just temporary. I thought I'd try it out, see how things went, and if I didn't like it, I could always leave. But what I didn't realize was how difficult it would be to get out once I was in. At first, it seemed simple. If I didn't like it, I'd go home. But home wasn't the same anymore. My house was empty, and it had become difficult to maintain remotely. My children had already started making changes, selling things they thought I wouldn't need, even considering renting the place out. When I mentioned the idea of coming back, they hesitated. Are you sure you can manage on your own, Mom? Wouldn't it be safer if you stayed put? We just want what's best for you. And then there was the issue of physical decline. After months of living in a place where I didn't have to cook, clean, or even walk very far, I wasn't as strong as I used to be. The independence I once had started to fade, making the idea of moving back home more daunting than I had imagined. I no longer felt confident in my ability to live alone, and that fear kept me trapped. I met others who had the same experience. They thought they'd try the nursing home for a short time, only to realize that leaving wasn't as easy as they thought. The longer you stay, the harder it becomes to readjust to life on the outside. Some even lose the option altogether once their house is sold or their savings are depleted by the cost of care. There is no going back. That's the part that no one tells you. Moving in feels like a decision you can reverse, but for most people, it isn't. The nursing home slowly becomes your whole world, and before you know it, the life outside you once knew starts to feel like a distant memory. If you're considering a nursing home, ask yourself, are you prepared for the possibility that once you're in, leaving might not be as simple as you think? Because once you settle in, the barriers to leaving, whether financial, physical, or emotional, can be harder to overcome than you expect. Looking back, I don't regret growing old, but I do regret believing that a nursing home was my only option. I went in hoping for comfort, safety, and a better quality of life. Instead, I found a world that slowly stripped away my independence, my privacy, my purpose, and even my sense of self. Does that mean all nursing homes are bad? Not necessarily. Some people genuinely need the level of care they provide. But before you make that decision, think carefully about what you're giving up. Because once you move in, life will never be quite the same. If I could do it over, I would have fought harder to stay in my home, explored more ways to get help without giving up my freedom, and made sure I truly needed to be there before making such a permanent move. And if you're facing this decision, I hope you take the time to ask yourself, is this really what's best for me, or is it just what seems easiest right now? Because the life you have today, your routines, your independence, your choices, is worth holding on to for as long as you can. Thank you for joining us today. We would love to hear from you. Please leave a comment below and share one thing you learned today and how you plan to use in your life. Your thoughts are important to us, so don't hesitate to share them. Reading your comments gives us great motivation and encouragement. If you enjoyed this video and found it helpful, please like, subscribe, and share. Your support helps us continue creating good content to inform and inspire you. Thank you for watching, and we look forward to seeing you in our next video. Don't forget to click the subscribe button and the bell icon so you don't miss any of our new content.